All right, hello, I'm back again. As you can tell, this is the final part in our podcast. This is the podcast number 2, the Great War podcast. We broke this into sections, so you can really just watch what you sort of need and are interested in.
Yeah.
Hopefully, this is the big one that you're interested in, and eventually, I've gotten to, and we put enough on social media that you can actually find this. Since it will be quite deep
Yes.
in the playlist.
Speak the last one.
We are now talking about the potential outcomes in alternative history of what the early 20th century could have become and what this Great War may have sparked off into different parts.
And to start, we need to have a small discussion about what alternative history actually means. And that means that we're going to be looking at what actually happened, seeing what people were thinking about, what things might have happened, what alternatives and decisions were being made, and then looking at a couple of the things that were said no to.
Right. Again, this is because we're looking in a lens of history that is much more
Speculative.
They're speculative in sort of that armchair sort of, science-y fiction sort of level of stuff. But also, we're looking at this in terms of, strategic value. And then if you change up your plan a little bit differently,
look at the results.
How can you see things happening differently? And by being a little hardened or being a little more strict when choosing your options and objectives, maybe you can get what you want done better. All right.
Okay.
So
getting into it,
I think we're breaking this into 3 sections or maybe 4. I'm floating this one by you.
Okay.
We're doing if the war had. You want to do if the war had not even occurred?
We'll do that one last.
We're doing that one last. Okay.
Because it's poignant.
Okay, we're going to all the ones about the war had occurred.
War happened.
By the standard history of the war. Now we're doing one. We're going to start with the ones on what happens if the war finishes early before the German commanders in 1915
go. It not happening.
There's no way we could win.
Yeah.
So these are all ones definite that the Central Powers could definitely
easily win.
Could have the stronger end of the deal.
And don't worry, there are a couple in here that are also in time victories.
Okay. Then we have the 1915 to 1917, where the whole thing's just a quagmire, and maybe we could just resolve this quickly.
Maybe we need an armistice.
Then you have the post 1917 of how do you exactly write up that armistice?
Yeah.
Who does it include? What is it about? How do things come about out of it? We're probably actually going to, in that section, talk about how the war really ended and why this particular conflict isn't just a failure on why it started, but why it ended.
Yeah.
And I probably did that backwards for you on the screen over there, but
right gets hard when you're weird.
We're probably going to view these in a perspective going from things that are very much about keeping those empires alive to outcomes that very much keep that new world of the 20th century, this internationalism to eventually take root and come alive, and then all those things in the middle that just don't work, like white pieces and prolonged conflicts and all
the
kinds
nasty, terrible ways to end conflicts that
don't really resolve anything.
Yeah.
All right. Pre-1915.
Pre-1915. So this is the outcome we can get to if the Schlieffen Plan actually works.
Or even if it's just the Austrians and the Russians. Like if
the Austrians have their shit together.
No. Going back to that original statement we did in the history section of the Austrians can clearly articulate to the Russians, we only want to have this war against
Serbia for reparations. We are not interested in annexation. Hungary says no.
Right.
Austria? We really want to.
So that's
Hungary?
just
No.
A quick conflict. Does it even involve the Germans?
It may not even involve the Germans. It might involve German observers.
Okay.
That's
so it becomes this quick treaty. The treaty
basically says something along the lines of Serbia is going to give Austria rights to investigate the death of
Franz Ferdinand.
It's going to allow them to enter Serbia and basically ignore most of their sovereignty. Serbia is going to pay them a certain amount for the offenses that it's given them. Serbia is going to... There's a long list of things that basically Austria is going to say, all right, you're just going to pay up. And...
Any other stipulations to that, or
nothing major.
Okay, and that's resourced from.
That's resourced from a large number of documents, including that one right there, which is the Ring of Steel, which is an amazing book, which mentions what Austria actually wanted going into the war. Because these are things that are not widely known.
So this is what some Austrians wanted, or what?
This is what the Austrian government wanted, officially. Because
So
even
really-
as rigid and old school as Austria was, there were still parliaments and things to discuss this sort of thing. They were not like the modern idea of a parliament. This is a bunch of lords sitting around going, yes.
All right.
And there's the
Then
Hungarian
we're
one.
going to
which
get
actually
into
is
the next level of outcome, which is we are going to have a conflict.
yes,
It is
it's going to be major.
It's going to be major. Where definitely the Russians are going to get involved,
Yes.
which means the French are going to get involved.
Yep. There is no alternative history where the Russians do not call for the French. It doesn't exist.
Well,
Well, it does exist, but something terrible would have
again,
to happen.
you're in alternate history. We can speculate what ifs
Yeah.
to any level stuff.
But basically what
French,
happens...
France and Russia get involved.
Yeah.
You're definitely having
We're going to have to enact the Schlieffen Plan because that is the German plan.
okay.
And in this one, what could happen is Germany comes to an agreement with Belgium
So actually,
such that we can just take a train. Bye-bye. You're neutral. No, I'm not invading you.
I really don't think that Belgium would ever. Agree
Belgium
with
would probably never agree to this. But it could happen if they sweeten the deal with a whole bunch of money, or land gained in France, or both. And it could have happened if Germany and Britain have very good ties, and the British could convince the Belgians to do this. Very unlikely to
that.
happen.
Or that the Schlieffen Plan does work, and they do the break out of Lorraine, and then they actually perform the military plan
Yes.
accordingly.
Yes. I was going to go for first what happens if we don't even bring in Britain or Belgium.
So you don't even bring in the Britain and Belgium.
The French are screwed.
Yeah. The whole thing.
Even if they hold on to the bottom of the Schlieffen...
This
on
becomes
the line,
Austria.
This becomes-
Annexations now has start happening.
This is
what it
called
becomes.
Austria and Germany get to do whatever the hell they want. Welcome to Kaiserreich.
Okay, go ahead.
This isn't actually what Kaiserreich says happens, but this is what should happen to get an event like Kaiserreich.
Okay.
Kaiserreich states it's a big, long slugfest and nobody really wins, but the Central Powers come out on top. That would never happen.
Well, I actually have that.
It could occur, but it's very unlikely.
Um,
Anyhow, moving on to the next outcome, which is, okay, Britain and Belgium are joining the Entente. Germany would still probably be capable of smashing the French if the British Expeditionary Forces are late by even as much as 2 weeks. And the Belgians can't hold on to League for as long as they did. 2 weeks. League was held for 3 weeks. The last week was bolstered by the British. Welcome to German plans are done in a day-by-day calendar basis. They are precise.
oh, okay.
That's why I love them.
Well, yeah, which equally means that when you're digging up the histories on this,
You get to go, oh, this is what should have happened in this hour.
day
This is
by
what
day
actually happened.
risks and
You know,
and
how good
analysis.
were they at actually carrying this thing out?
Whereas some of the other histories are a little more in depth on. Well, actually, no, you get quite a bit of Germanic poetry out of this, and
There's a lot of history on this.
yeah.
This is
Which is
basically-
why World War I is a popular topic amongst historians and academics.
Yeah.
No
No matter where you are.
even though it sort of gets forgotten by the common
The
popular
common
culture.
American.
Popular culture.
Yeah, too.
Uh,
So what would happen in this one is if the Germans can keep the timetable moving smoothly, even with Britain,
okay.
all Britain would really be able to do is to add more men onto Fortress Paris. Which means that if the
And
French
bolster maybe the court,
and bolster Calais or something out there. Dunkirk, it doesn't matter really.
Yeah, okay.
Or Belgium, it doesn't really matter which. So long as the Germans get through the League quickly, the French are basically doomed. So long as the French army is encircled. If the French army somehow breaks out of that encirclement,
Okay.
we're in a
You
whole
still
other
have very
picture.
much central power win, central power win, central power
Yeah.
win. They
There's
have
a lot of
different capabilities
of
of
what-
when they win and where they can
That
win.
one would not be a hard central power win. It would be a soft central power win. They're only going to get some demands.
Okay.
They're not going to be able to just go, I want everything. They're only going to be able to go, I want this, I want that, I need that, and let's calm down. Now, what happens next now begins to look radically different. We're now into Entente starts winning. This would be what happens if the Schlieffen Plan stalls.
They know they can't pull it off.
If it's
And
like
they-
we're in the middle
they
of
know to
it,
stop
and
early.
and they know to stop early, and somebody can convince the staff generals, "Hey, this was a dumb one. We somehow messed up. Our trains didn't run on time. How terrible."
So, I mean, what
What basically happens on that one is it's a hard one. We don't know what happens.
The reparations definitely
The
come in,
reparations may or may not happen.
uh,
Arguably, I'd argue the wars still keep going.
okay.
More likely than not on that one.
Okay. So now we're definitely going to break into that 1915, 1917. I think.
Yeah, the Entente really doesn't have much of a chance in the early war, and the main reason is Russia doesn't get as involved in the early war. And the only way that
Oh no, he has a big rush at the beginning.
it has a big rush in the beginning,
Yeah.
but they don't really reach all their objectives. So if Russia somehow steamrollers through the east before von Hindenburg can pull everyone around and actually defend the east, and Schlieffen is countered like he could have been, then it is an Entente victory. Berlin falls, Russia gets to do whatever they want. We don't really know what Russia wanted out of that early stage of the war because, strangely enough, a lot of the imperial Russian papers get burned.
Anyways. Are we having white peace in this middle
I don't
period?
know
Or are
if
we
that's
having a
a-
prolonged conflict?
It's
I
been a
think-
short war. It's probably the Central Powers place late reparations.
Okay.
It's probably a little bit of territory gets moved around.
Okay. Or
Nothing major.
so before 1917, you're still not up to the point where you can construct big, long trench lines that are heavily reinforced, and we have an almost infinite sort of conflict, like you see in Iron Harvest, or
only way you
some of these
fall-
other moral history,
Yeah.
diesel punk,
The only way
never-ending
you
war.
fall into that quickly
Yeah.
is if the Germans somehow don't have their stuff together, which is nearly impossible because they had one plan.
Well, no. This is like they go all the way to the edge of the Baltic.
Yeah.
Right. They know they're not really going to have anything worth it
By
past
that point, you're already past 1915.
Oh no, I was already in the.
Oh, we're in the
1957.
past
Yeah,
1915.
if you listen to me.
So sorry. Those long, prolonged wars, what begins to start to happen is, at that length of a conflict, many things can occur.
Okay.
So if the Austrians suddenly start imploding,
Yeah.
the Germans can't fight that many three fronts at once.
Right.
They can only they're barely lucky to fight two at once.
Correct.
Three at once, Germany loses. Central Powers get split up, and it's a bad time in Central Europe for Central Europe. Well, for monarchist Central Europe. Anyway,
So there's potential to have a breakup and everything breaks down in 1915, 1917.
in 1915, 1917, everything.
If the Austrians do hold,
If the Austrians do hold, this war begins to just get longer.
and we do see the rise.
And we
of
do
these
see that.
prolonged trenches.
Yes.
And the point I have here
Yeah.
is that there's at this point, because before the Americans come in, this is before the Russians collapse into the communism. This is before France has its socialist revolutions and the other ones have socialist revolutions.
Yeah.
And the Irish even
Didn't
have
think
their
about it.
notions.
Well, they had the notion. They just didn't act on them yet.
Take action.
Yes.
You see the potential
Yes.
for empires that drive nothing but a prolonged and infinite conflict.
The problem with that is it costs a lot of resources and a lot of men and a lot of money to stay at war forever.
Yeah, but in these sorts of things, you don't have to
Yeah.
just run the whole time. You can
Sure.
just build a defensive wall.
Yes.
I don't think the Central Powers are self-sufficient.
The problem is they weren't. You need a certain amount of rubber and goodness that the Central Powers didn't have on hand.
Yeah, that's the generalized purpose for the conflict that we talked 2 parts ago.
Yeah.
In the grand empires of
Mhm.
of life.
Check that one out again.
So I mean, they can't get that from Scandinavia, even if
Nope.
they open
Even
up-
if they wanted to.
even if they tried their best. The Dutch are sort of the only option.
And the
blockade
Dutch can't
is-
really get to their colonies
the,
at the moment.
the blockade is not doing too well.
Yeah.
I mean, so the only way you could manage this is you white peace out.
Yes.
You let whatever the border is.
Yeah.
And that now becomes the new nature of the world.
Yeah.
Where these powers have stayed in progress.
Yeah.
But they sort of back out before everything
goes to shit.
Yeah, it becomes these major crises.
Yes. The problem is balancing on the edge of the knife there. You gotta find just the right time to do that. Because
I don't. First thing, I
I
don't think diplomatically anyone had interest to have that happen.
No.
Because I don't think there's no objective to the Germans to hold land in Belgium and hold land in Eastern Europe.
In this conflict, no.
There's no gains for that. They really want to figure out either Congo or the
Indonesia, Southeast Asia, that sort of thing.
Something of some nature. Yeah. It could be a fair argument that they give Belgium back to the Belgians and they take Belgium Congo, and maybe this, you could have
that sort of
diplomatic potential.
Yes.
And the thing could resolve before the Americans and then the Russian split.
Yes.
All right. So we want to talk about post 1917. Sort of the problems.
Next thing that could have happened in that 1917 problem is if your split started happening a little bit faster. This is what if Lenin didn't actually get thrown out of Russia to begin with.
Okay, and this is like what if a lot of those other socialist
uprisings get a little more gasoline on the fire.
Okay.
The problem with this is it's a lot of speculation.
Yes.
Splits and civil wars are some of the nastiest things to predict.
Right.
Yeah. So if the Russian Civil War happened a little bit earlier, it means about the same thing that happened with the Russian Civil War in this one. There's going to be a big, long, nasty conflict in Russia.
And they can't stay
They need to wipe peace out.
And that means that that would mean that fundamentally Russia has to break out before anything else sort of occurs. Whatever border's happening over there is the border, and it just becomes whatever else is happening out on the other side.
But knowing the Germans, if a Russian Civil War is going on, they are not taking every division off that border. They're sitting there with men.
I'm saying that's now become this defensive wall between what is fundamentally Central Europe and what is fundamentally this. But now it's fundamentally almost like the Far East.
Yeah. It's not Europe anymore.
Well, no, you might have St. Petersburg, but they might just take that in a small play, and you're left with like Moscow and beyond.
It's a very weird setting for that.
So that would become a very weird setting. That's a very strong Central Power.
Yes.
You could also have that.
You could also have the Central
Power. Other than the fact that Lenin is probably one of the most active international communists of the period.
Yeah. Trotsky too, but Lenin mostly.
But they're both active in Russia.
Yeah. Well, one was active in Switzerland for a little while.
Yes.
And what could have happened is if you have Lenin in Switzerland and Dada spreading culture out of Switzerland into Germany,
there would be a countercultural,
there could be a
anti-war movement in the Central Powers.
In the Central Powers, most likely to find its best teeth into Austria-Hungary and then Germany.
Okay.
The reason why is because Austria-Hungary was already having a lot of anti-war movements in it early.
Right. Again, from the rise of the small
Slavic
nations within.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that is another one that we have not even thought of, actually.
Because it seems unlikely that these sorts of splinters would occur any earlier than they did.
Yes.
Because something as drastic as the Russian Revolution took years of being at war and taking massive losses.
Also with German support.
Yeah. And German support. And the Germans being willing to do that. Because remember, these are conservative Germans.
They would really have to be Italians to bolster a...
The Italians didn't want to do that either.
It was a little too creative for what they were doing. But it wouldn't be outlandish.
The problem is Italians also had problems with socialists and syndicalists for the entire history of Italy. Again, the Fate of the Force of Destiny is an amazing book. It talks so nitty-gritty.
I haven't gone through that level of details, and
Italy is a very weird nation.
You have.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yes, that would almost have to be Swiss Dadaism taking over the world.
Just doing weird stuff.
And it doesn't. It just doesn't seem.
It doesn't work.
It makes sense for what that movement is to begin with. Are we going to have to make links to what all that is? because it's funky art.
Dada is funky art, funky philosophy, and a couple of nut jobs.
It's eventually what bolsters the Basques and Salvador Dali and Barcelona in Spain.
And it also
movement
takes what happens.
I do believe a lot of this starts in the late 19th century.
Yes.
It's not just a.
Oh no. Steiner is a major force in what will eventually become Dada, in the philosophy of Dada. He was there because the first thing about Dada.
Far more about this than
I love Dada. It's weird shit.
It is. Yeah.
So Dada is a weird movement that's.
But it's like an artistic movement.
It's an artistic and philosophical movement.
Yeah, and it's counterculture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the start of hippies. But they're very different hippies.
Yeah, they're we're not to the environmental causes and that sort of stuff. But we definitely are in anti-war,
anti-establishment, anti-war, anti-large number of things.
Anyways,
much of them were
that would be interesting to see a world of that happening in this perspective.
I don't know.
I don't know if anyone would ever invest heavily in it.
I hope not. That is weird. But that's too weird.
But in France, you definitely see these sorts of things happening. Significantly.
France
and that could have flipped.
Shook up multiple times.
And there were major mutinies and major actual conflicts.
France was almost kicked out of the war multiple times.
From its own socialists.
From its own socialists, from its own soldiers dissenting from the stormtroopers.
Whereas in Britain and the Commonwealth, this is really not.
Didn't happen.
Yeah. Though India may have.
India could have gone, and Ireland could have gone, but not like that. Australia wouldn't have.
All right, we're now actually getting down to how the war really resolves.
Yes.
The big one for World War I, and this is the reason why war. For those who don't remember the history, the Entente wanted the Central Powers to pay huge reparations for the damages that had occurred.
Massive loss of life.
Right. They took land. They demanded demilitarizations. They demand fund. So that's the amount of money that to pay is something that the following Germany could never do.
Yeah.
They demand changes of government.
For example, Germany finally paid off its World War I reparations in 2010.
I'm not actually savvy to that. I'm sorry.
I think it was either 2010 or 2009.
If you can find...
There's a link.
Okay.
It'll be there. Yeah.
I certainly hope so.
It took forever. That's the lowered World War I reparations, because they were lowered after World War II. Anyhow.
Fundamentally, you have that. Yeah. You then, the whole world had to be split up into all kinds of little countries that the people at the Treaty of Versailles determined, which
was very haphazard.
If you know anything about today's history, it isn't working.
Versailles didn't work well.
It still isn't working. This is like why Iraq has the borders it has, and Syria has the borders it has.
Churchill's hiccup.
We're gonna actually. You want to comment about Al Stewart? His
interwar
album.
There's a delicious album by a British singer-songwriter, Al Stewart,
who's a sort of historic ballad sort of person.
He's funky.
It's in the recommendations.
Down below. There's an album Between the Wars which has a song called "The Treaty of Versailles" on it.
Yep,
and it goes into it.
He'll make snide offhand comments during this section.
Yes,
that reference that.
Frequently.
And hopefully Al will eventually see this.
Hi Al. Huge fan.
You can tell we're the only two people our age who are listening to your music.
Nah, not quite.
In New England.
There we go.
So you have that.
Yeah.
There also was a push by Woodrow Wilson to have 14 points that would create League of Nations, popular sovereignty, and fundamentally would not do all the things that the main Entente powers were trying to push for. Yeah. Fundamentally, this would mean places like the curious borders in Europe would vote and decide which nations they wish to become part of.
This would allow East Prussia to go, do I want to be part of Germany, or do I want to be part of Poland?
Things like Catalonia would be able to decide.
I don't believe Spain was on the table. But
No,
there would be precedent for
it.
it.
Would set up the precedent for
Yes.
this sort of conflict resolution amongst people, such as civilians could determine
Yes.
what nations they're part of, not their rulers.
Yes.
Fundamentally, this is something that even in the 21st century, we aren't even resolved from what we did in the early 20th.
Yep.
To begin, and then that was thought of and could have become practice.
Yeah.
Even the strong part of the League of Nations is that it would, unlike the United Nations that we did get after World War II, is it would set up a far stronger sort of system for resolving conflicts via providing the powers the obligation to go to war to stop things. In name, this would be recognition that the Armenian genocide
was in fact genocide. Yes, actually did happen.
and the other powers of the world had to do something about it.
Yes.
There are good things that did come out of the tiny League of Nations. The unfortunate part is people could just leave it willy-nilly, and the fact that certain countries like our own here in the United States did not ratify means that we never even joined it. Even though it was somehow our idea.
Because Woodrow Wilson didn't even have the popular opinion of his own party at the moment.
Yeah, well, the fact that his party is barely a third of the voting population at the time. Yep. American democracy is finest.
Isn't it great?
Liberal ideals better than what we can,
what we came from.
So yeah, it had the ability to define borders and resolve conflicts far better. They did that in the sort of breakaway of Finland, and negotiating islands in between Finland and Sweden.
They also did that with the previously mentioned Trieste.
Right.
And a large number of other independent cities that were allowed to be largely
So they
independent.
resolved these sorts of conflicts, and a lot of this happened quite quickly and quite readily.
Yes. Strangely enough, if you sit the major powers of the world down at a table and you tell them you can do whatever you want, they can do stuff.
Right. The problem is getting them all there.
Getting them all
the
there,
size of the
getting them all
conflicts
to
it
stop
took
killing
to
each other.
Get them there.
Yeah.
But anyways, and the fact that the only legitimacy that this would have
Was the fact that everyone had to pay in lives to be there.
Well, no, right. But if you establish the League of Nations, now legitimacy could be established through a system of internationalization.
Yes.
And this is really the major conflict, and why World War I is sort of this turning point in history, where we could have gone from merely just having nation states that became these hegemonic powers within spheres,
Massive rampant imperialism.
to then a superpower sort of level of spheres, to now, it's the West won, a treaty between, sort of the U.S. and the British Commonwealths, and then maybe France on the side, we could have a system of internationalism that could define our treaties and work out conflicts without huge loss of life. And that really is the aspirations that came out of this conflict.
Yes.
Not in a countercultural sort of movement, but on
that counterculture began to become mainstream culture.
Right.
After World War I, pacifism began to become massively popular.
Right.
After World War I, people began to actually start questioning why should a nation go to war.
Throughout all of political culture.
Yeah.
Whereas
everywhere.
Before this, war was seen as glorious.
Yes. Honorable.
And after it, it seemed as foolish.
Yes.
And that's really the point of resolve and Zen. And I think we should end this sort of part 2 podcast on. We're gonna have probably one more part.
Yeah.
It's going to be sort of outro. What we'll be doing from in the following month, that kind of stuff. So catch you in the next little part here.